Hello and welcome to How to Build Your Website. It's a Velocity training course. My name is Anna Marsden. Today we're going to be looking at how to build the right content for your website for humans and for search engines. And we're going to be looking at some free tools so you can build your own website. We're going to finish off by looking at Google Analytics so you can measure the success of your website. So to get started, what's your website for? You need to think very, very carefully about what you want from your website. Think practically as well as technically. Do you want leads? Do you want people to get in touch with you? Do you want to get people's email addresses? What customers are you targeting? What are your audience? Who are your audience? And what are you giving them? So what's really useful to look at is in your existing website, look through and audit the pages that you already have. Does each page have a call to action? Do the customers that you are pulling to your website know why you want them there? Do they have a good, clear call to action? We often look at websites and we think they look fabulous because they've got pictures and loads of text. However, research tells us that humans read a digital page differently than the search engines. So, for example, on this slide, you can see that research has told us that an F shape is how we read a digital page. What that means is we look across the page, down, and then slightly in the middle, then continue down to the bottom. If you're thinking about a call to action, the worst place to put it would be right at the bottom. So think very carefully about the structure of each page, not for the search engines immediately, but for humans. So think about that F shape. Where's your call to action? The best place to put the call to action would be in the middle of the F shape. Also, you don't want to have all your text in a long paragraph. Try and break up the paragraphs. Try and think of an idea per paragraph. Use bullet points. That's why listicles are so popular at the moment. We're lazy and we don't want to read loads of information. So if you help the reader understand in very short sentences and short paragraphs what you want them to take away from the page, it's more useful ultimately for them. Think about highlighting using different fonts. Think about images. You don't want to have a boring piece of text. You also want to make sure that people, when they get to your website, can view it on the device that they're using. Now, we walk around with phones in our hands thinking that they're just phones. They're not, they're mini computers, and people use mobile to use the internet. They search and they use the internet to look at your website. Make sure, therefore, your website is responsive. And what that means is your website will respond to the size of the screen that the person's using. So if they use a mobile, the website will respond to that small shape. If it's a tablet, same. If it's a desktop or a laptop. This is very important because you don't want people to jump off your website as soon as you've got them there because they can't read it. So think very carefully about humans and how they read website content. So you also want to think about how search engines read your website. Do they understand what's on the page? So in terms of basic search engine optimization, think of Google, for instance, who are a huge search engine company. They have about 90% of the UK web traffic through Google. Yahoo and Bing also exist, but 90% of the UK adults use Google. Google is a librarian in this sense. They understand the content and the resource on a page, and they deliver it to a customer that's looking for it. Search engine optimization helps the Google bots, their little robots that travel all over the internet, to find out the content of your page. What search engine optimization is helping those bots understand the detail and the content on each page. Now you can do this by following a simple structure, which we'll get to later on. Search engine optimization is full of many ingredients. Think of it as a recipe. It's a recipe of different amounts, different ingredients. And Google specifically are changing these all the time. If you upload your content regularly, then the Google bots will see this as new, and you've got more chance of being up in the search engine results page, up to the top. Everyone wants to be on page 1 of Google, but it's not an exact science. You can help with basic search engine optimization. So updating your content, making sure that the keywords that you select in the back of the website reflect the information that's on the front of the website. You want to make sure that you have a website that loads quickly, because the Google bots have got loads and loads of information to search. They don't want to spend too long trying to find out what's on your page. So the actual technical structure of the website is important too. So a good place to start is by thinking, what words describe the products and services that you as a business deliver? Now, bear in mind different colloquialisms, bear in mind how people might refer to a product that you have or a service that you have. If you deliver first aid training, someone might have a different name for that. Think about all the ways that people can describe a service that you deliver and create your keywords around this. Now, with Google AdWords, you can access their tool, their keyword tool, which will help you come up with which keyword or phrase is the best for you to use. It used to be free, it's not anymore. So you might have to think about spend, but there is a tool to help you choose the right keywords for you and your demographic. So, coming back to linking the key phrases with a web page. This is a really good structure, a really good approach to your website. So what you want to do is include broad keywords and maybe specific local keywords as well. If you're a plumber in Northampton, say, you might want to use that plumber in Northampton as a keyword phrase. Now, what you need to do with that is make sure that the Google bots, less the humans, can understand that that's in the back of the page. So therefore, when the Google librarian is looking for the resource for the person that's looking for a plumber in Northampton, that your website gets delivered to them. Now, this is search engine optimization, SEO, in its simplest form. If we can look at this slide here, it's a table that gives you an idea of writing the product and service, choosing a keyword, and selecting your web page for it. This is a really good exercise to do with everyone who is in charge of doing the website. You can do some customer research about the words that they use. That might be useful as well. So we've got a good idea of search engine optimization. In terms of keywords, we've got a good idea of how humans read the page. We've probably got a good idea of why you want a website. What's it for? What do you ultimately want out of it? Now we have to ask ourselves, how are we going to build it? And there's lots of different options available. There are WYSIWYG builders, and that sounds dramatic, but it stands for what you see is what you get. So the image that you will see while you're crafting a page for your website is exactly what it's going to be like on the page. There are WordPress content management systems. There are Drupal. There are Joomla. There are lots of different options for you to be able to build a website so that you can write the content in the back, approve it, make sure it's readable, and then you can publish. So coming back to the question that I asked at the beginning, what do you want from a website? What's quite important, I would think, is to make sure that you don't have to go to a third party to upload content to your website. Especially because we know that uploading new content regularly helps the Google bots and helps your search engine optimization. So you don't want to have to pay or go to a third party to upload new content, especially if you're thinking about blogging or updating your website regularly. So with a content management system like WordPress, like Joomla, like Drupal, you can do this yourself. With a WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get, you can also do it yourself. I would say that's a key reason to choose one of these website builders. Some of the other reasons to choose these are that the content management system allows you to work in collaboration with people. WordPress.org is created for organizations rather than blogging, which is your WordPress.com, and it's important not to get those two confused. So my example today is going to be WordPress specifically. You can choose WordPress.com just to deliver a blog to your audience. However, if you want to have more detailed, more professional, more options to customize your website, you want to be looking at WordPress.org. The reason you want to do that is because they have what they call plugins. Plugins that help you deliver the best content. One of the plugins we'll be looking at today is a Yoast plugin for search engine optimization. Another reason to go with WordPress, you can choose from professional themes. So you can choose the colours that are brand aligned with your company. So it doesn't look like just someone else's WordPress.com blog. So before you choose your content management system for your website, you have to buy a hosting package and a domain name. Once you've done that, you can then decide on the design of the website. Now, you can choose the website, the WordPress design, but before you do that, it would be really useful to design the actual structure of the website. Where do you want your customers to go to? From where? Where should the pages follow on from? Think very carefully about drafting the content of the pages with specific reference to the keywords from the previous exercise. You want to make sure that you have this information before you start getting involved in what the design of the website will look like. The reason you want to do that is you don't want to be too excited with it looking fabulous, but the content not being good. Also, it's worth bearing in mind that because of search engine optimization and the way that we now use search, we don't necessarily as consumers jump into a website at the homepage. So think very carefully about navigation. Can people, once they've got to a page, navigate to somewhere else? Can they navigate to somewhere that you want them to? Or do they get delivered to a page and then they can't navigate back to, say, your contact page or your home page? So what I'm saying is the home page might not necessarily be the landing page of where your potential customers come into your website. So think carefully about that in their journey. So once you've selected WordPress as our example, once we've selected our design, you can then think about the plugins. And some plugins really help you with the type of functionality that you can get from WordPress. So if we look at the back, what you call the back end of WordPress, this is the content management system. You can see at the top, you have a clear idea of where you are. You're logged in. You can have many logins. You can have different permissions as well, which is very important. So the top right-hand corner will tell you who's logged in. You can have editor permissions and you can have overall administrative permissions. Now, the reason I mentioned this is it might be useful to have lots of editors to help you create the content, but ultimately not that many administrators that could say, delete your website. So you want to think carefully about that. So at the left-hand side, this is where the main menu lies. And there's two important things that I want to draw your attention to. One of them is posts and one of them is pages. Posts are really important because it's the mechanism by which you can upload your news or your blog. And these posts are updated in a chronological order. And this helps you make sure, again, thinking in search engine optimization terms, this helps you upload new content for your customers. That's an easy way to do that through posts. Pages are nearly the same, but the pages are static, they don't move. So with posts, you can put one news article from last week in, and then this week will be superseded. So the content goes like this. A static page will remain static. It won't move, it won't be updated unless you go and update that same page. So posts and pages look exactly the same. And as you can see on the slides here, you can edit the page title, the page address, the content, the images within the page, and you can label all these things behind the scenes for the search engine optimization. You can also edit it in HTML, but for those of us that don't know that, this is why WordPress and others are so popular. You can have a very professional looking website and not need to know code. So on the right-hand side menu, you can see that there's options there to be able to save as a draft, be able to schedule for future times, or make it a private page or post. And this is really useful when you're working collaboratively with other people. At the bottom there, you can see I've put in one of the plugins that I mentioned before, which is Yoast. And this is a search engine optimization plugin. This is a really easy way of making sure that you not necessarily an SEO expert, has done everything that you can do to make sure the page is as optimized as possible. So at the bottom there, you see that there is room for a focus keyword. You put the focus keyword in there based on your research, and then that is the keyword or phrase that has to be thread through the content of the page. And the plugin helps you by giving you ticks of where it's being applied. It then gives you a traffic light system, a green, amber and red, to let you know how well you've optimized the page. This would definitely be a recommendation from me in terms of a plugin for WordPress.org. It helps you to do the most that you can do as a non-SEO expert. So, where do you need to put the keywords? It's very important that you put the keywords in the article header, in the page title, in the page URL. So that's the unique resource locator, that's the address. So your keyword has to be in there. It has to be in the content. But bear in mind who your audience is. Your audience ultimately isn't Google. You're trying to make sure Google understands what's on your page, but you're not trying to get Google, you're not trying to sell to Google. So you're trying to sell to human beings. Human beings don't like reading on a page a repetitive keyword. So bear that in mind when you're putting the keyword or phrase in the content. You also want to make sure that you put it in the metadata. Now the metadata is the little bit of blurb that's at the bottom of the search engine results. Now, those of you who remember books, it's at the back of the book. It's a little bit of blurb that tells you what's inside the book. It also helps the search engines, but it ultimately helps people pick your result in the search engine results page over someone else's. Make sure you have a really good, clear description, including your keyword. It's a great place to put a call to action as well. You ultimately want to make sure that the keywords are thread through each page. Don't forget the pictures. Any images that you upload to WordPress, and you do this from easily uploading to a media library, once you've uploaded your picture, you have to make sure that you tag it. The Google bots that they're searching for the information, they can't read the picture, but they read the alternative text. Now, the alternative text is a field that you can fill in when you're uploading the image to the website. In any edit screen, you can see this. If you put the keyword in the alternative text, that will help the robots, the search engine robots, understand what's in that image. By the by, it's also useful to know that for people who have poor sight or are blind, if they're using technology that will say what's on the computer screen, having alternative text for pictures is really useful as well. So before we go any further about websites, it's really important that you understand the compliance of websites as well. If you're a company, Companies House have some really good information about business stationery. And although this seems not to fit, websites are business stationery. So you have to make sure you have your legal address of your company and all the registered numbers that are applicable. You can find more details on companieshouse.gov relating to this. Okay, so once you've set up your website, you've got a good clear idea of who you're talking to, what you're saying, what you want them to do, you've developed your website, you've put all the content on there, and you're ready to go. Lots of people say to me they've got a website, but it doesn't work for them. I then ask them, do they measure if it works or not? And if you don't measure, then how do you know that your website's not working? For the next section, we're going to look at Google Analytics. And Google Analytics is a free piece of software that's a tracking code that sits in the back of your website. It tells you the overall numbers that have visited your website. It also tells you the pages that they went to and the pages that they didn't like. So to expand on that, a bounce rate in Google Analytics is when, imagine that this is our web page. We've gone to all the hard work of understanding who's going to come, where the content's going to be laid out, what keyword. We've designed it, it's brand aligned. We've spent a lot of time putting effort into this web page. Now, someone's come to visit and they immediately turn around and go away. They don't like what they've seen. That's a bounce rate. They've come to the page and bounced straight off. So what you don't want is a high bounce rate. You don't want a 99.9% bounce rate, because that is telling you something. That's telling you that all the effort you've gone to is futile because someone doesn't actually like it. The majority of people don't like what you've got on there. It could be an indicator that your website isn't responsive. A high bounce rate is a really good indicator that you don't have a responsive web page. So, not only does Google Analytics tell you the general numbers of who came to your web page, it tells you where they've come from, whether it's a social media site, whether it's a newspaper, whether they have stayed on the page for a long time. So it's really, really good to set up a free Google Analytics dashboard. Before you do this, I would suggest you do an exercise about what you think success is. So if you see by this slide, there's 3 columns here. You want to look at what to measure, so the metric. You want to look at what it will tell you, and then you want to decide what that will inspire you to do. What change will you do based on that information? Then you can say your website doesn't work. So for my example here, I've got direct traffic. So we're going to be monitoring direct traffic. And what that means is someone knows the URL, the address of my website, and they've put it in to a web browser and got my website. What can that tell you? That can tell you that people know your website. So if people know your website, it's probably a good indicator that they have a good idea of your brand, of your company. So it could show you brand awareness. So measuring the percentage of direct traffic is very important if you're trying to increase your brand exposure and brand awareness. So taking a look at Google Analytics menu, very similar to WordPress in terms of the main menu is down the left-hand side. Now, I ask a lot of people how many people measure their websites. Loads of people put up their hands. If I ask, do people look at the information? Less people put up their hands. And then when I ask if everyone who still has their hand up actually understands the metrics that they are reading, fewer people have their hands up. Now, Google Analytics is great, but it's really complex to understand without really having a good navigation of the software. So what you can do is you can go to Google Analytics Gallery and you can share, you can take someone else's dashboard, and a dashboard is made up of 12 widgets of information. So 12 bits of information that tells you where the traffic came from, how long people stayed on pages, whether they were mobile devices people read your website on or not. You can select the bits of information that you want on a dashboard. The good thing about Google Analytics is it has a massive gallery of already pre-existing dashboards. You can share these and your data will be pulled into them. So once you've had a look, then you can start to measure and monitor. You can choose pie charts, line graphs, bar charts, tables, which will help you interpret the information. It's really important that you look at these. So people put in the tracking code and don't tend to look back at the analytics. You're really missing a trick because you've gone to the effort of putting the tracking code in. And I must say that Google Analytics are constantly updating what information that they can give you. So recently they updated one of the tracking codes so you could get information about age and demographic. You really want to look at it. So how do you make sure you do look at it? In the dashboard section of Google Analytics, navigate from the top left-hand corner, the dashboard section. If you pull one of those in, at the top menu, you'll be able to see an email sign. It's as easy as entering that and typing your own email in, making sure that this dashboard, these analytics specific to your website get emailed to your inbox every week. You just have to open it from then on. So make sure you email the dashboard so you don't have to remember to go in to Google Analytics to look at it every week. Also, you want to make sure that you're tracking the right people. Now, there's nothing worse, and people do this on search engine optimization as well. There's nothing worse than you thinking you have 1,000 visitors to your website and then realizing that 750 of them are your staff. You can filter the traffic. It's really important that you don't count yourself. So in Google Analytics, in the admin section, you can navigate to filters. You can put in your IP address, so where your internet comes into your office building, and filter out that traffic. Once you've done that, it's really clear who's visiting your website and you're not double counting, not counting your stuff. Okay, so to summarize, it's really important when you're building your own website that you think very carefully about the content, that you think carefully about what you want from the website and ultimately what your customers, potential customers, need from your website. Don't forget contact details, don't forget brand alignment. But I would say ultimately, when you're creating a web page and website, make sure that you have control of the content. With the content management systems that we looked at today, WordPress in particular, that allows you to update regularly, and that's a really powerful tool. You also want to make sure that you measure the success of your website. So not just putting the tracking code in, but actually looking at the data. Where do people go? Where do your visitors go? Do they drop off a certain page? Is it because you formatted it in a way that doesn't think about the F shape? Have you got contact details that are clear to read? You can set up goals in Google Analytics, and that's really useful. Even if you're ultimately trying to get leads and sell through your website, the first thing someone needs to do is get in touch with you. You can link your call us, contact us, get in touch with us button with a goal. Whenever that's pressed, it's success. So ultimately, to build your own website, you have to think about quite a few things, but definitely look at the free softwares that are available to update your own content by yourself. Thank you.